Well, Ted, once again, we are not meeting Friday night at 6 o'clock. We
I
are
know
very consistent here.
we have been consistently inconsistent, but we've been on Friday, so
Yes,
like at least we're getting the Fridays down.
that's
I know
right.
next week we're going to switch to a Thursday or Saturday. We'll know, but we've been pretty consistent, and we're also in the same state again,
Yes, that's right. That's
so
right.
that's been a while. So how you doing?
Good, good. Yeah, getting ready for the weekend. We're gonna have the hot one.
Yeah, 110. It's going to be good heat acclimatization this weekend for people out there training. Although it seems like half of our club is in Oregon in beautiful 75-degree weather.
That's right, and I hope that they are watching us because this will be a good show for them to watch and give them confidence that they're ready to go and they
Yep.
and they don't have any injuries that they need to deal with. So
Exactly. Although your co-host from Thursday night, I don't know if it's public knowledge. I'll say it anyways. I think he broke his toe in
oh
this
no.
today. So
Oh no.
uh, goodness gracious, but he's gonna be fine. But
Yeah.
anyhow, so this week we're super excited to have a guest on, and we've had several guests on in the past, but this guest is someone that I've known for the last 5 years. So the guest is Kyle Moore, and he is one of the athletic trainers for the Vegas Golden Knights. Kyle has been gracious enough to join us, and he's been super gracious with me and with the athletic training program at UNLV. Ever since he's come to town, he has shared his wisdom and knowledge with our students. I think usually he does 6 or 7 different guest lectures a year, and is becoming a pillar in our community as far as sports medicine is concerned. And so I was super excited to reach out to him and bring him on. And he does some cycling and has done a triathlon in the past. So he comes with a little bit of experience in that way. So tonight we're going to talk, how he handles injuries and does kind of risk management around injuries to help prevent his players from getting injured. So super excited to have him. So Kyle, how you doing tonight?
Good. Thank you I can't believe you remembered that I did a sprint triathlon. That was, I mean, I'm gonna be looking like a complete wuss in front of this crowd, but I
Hey,
mean the
once you
swim
do one triathlon, you're a triathlete for life.
That's right.
and a little backstory on that. I was supposed to do one with my father-in-law and my wife in an open lake swim. It was still a sprint, but it was an open lake swim. And I had to cancel last second because of classic athletic trainer scheduling issues. And I ended up doing one on the campus where I worked at the time, but the swim was in a pool. So like I've never lived that down with the family. I did one, and they're just like, it was in a pool. And like my father-in-law is like an ultra trail marathoner and like everything. Yeah, he doesn't do them anymore, but um yeah, so I get every once in a while I get the constant criticism of like, yeah, you did one, but it was in a pool. I'm like, thanks.
It still
But
counts. I think I've done 4 or 5 of my triathlons have had pool swims.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Okay.
yeah, I don't think that's yeah, that shouldn't discount you.
No, no,
Yeah,
not at
my
all.
closest activity now is I've gotten pretty deep into mountain biking,
Yeah.
with the availability of trails here, and COVID was a big jump starter for me with that, with having outdoor activity to do. So yeah, mountain biking is. I haven't really come across a mountain biking triathlon. I don't even know if they exist. Maybe they
They,
do. I don't know.
they do.
Yeah.
They're called Xterra.
Yeah.
And
Really?
so you mountain bike, but so you swim, same thing in a lake, mountain bike, and then trail run.
Ah,
And it's pretty popular, especially in the West.
yeah.
There's big events, and there's a world championship in Maui every year. It's a big deal.
That trail running would be hard. I switched to biking because my ankles suck, for lack of better words.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to handle the trail running part, but the
Yeah.
biking I really like.
So, anyways, so once again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your wisdom with us. So, one of the things that obviously we deal with in triathlon and in endurance sports is injury, right? I can't remember the latest stats specifically on running, but something like 75% of runners have an injury every year,
Mhm.
right? And then when you take that to triathlon, it probably becomes even worse. So that being said, obviously hockey, where you spend most of your time, is very similar. Like, what is the percentage of a player that can make it through a season without having an injury? Is it pretty?
Very low, very low. We usually have one or two a season where they haven't missed a game, but that doesn't mean they haven't had an injury. There's a big difference between having an injury and missing a game. So there's a lot of injuries that are played through. There's a lot of management to get the games done. So just because you see a player in the media make it through a whole season without an injury, they're probably going to be right on that list at the end of the season of getting a surgery. I mean, there's management there within primarily our department of getting people to play through things for a long period of time. Obviously, making the appropriate decision, what's best for the athlete in that moment. The athlete needs to be on board with this plan. It's always all about what the athlete can do and what they want to do. But we can use a lot of strategies in hand to try to get players to continue to play.
It's so interesting you said that, because that's triathlon in a nutshell, right? If your ankle is hurt, well, you may be able to still swim, right? Your shoulder's hurt, well, you can still bike and run. And a lot of times we manage injury that way. We can actually keep our fitness up, but we're injured, so we can't do all three sports, but we can always, kind of go back to one or the other. And I wonder if there's something kind of similar approach in hockey.
Yeah, what my mind went to when you first brought that up is we and when I say we, I mean us as we view ourselves as a performance staff, and that includes athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, manual therapists. It includes everyone, our team physicians. It includes all of us working collectively. And injury to us, we look at as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to train other things, right? So if we have a player that's out 4 to 6 weeks for a knee injury, right, we can really get after their upper body. If they got an old shoulder injury, they need some rotator cuffs activation work and maybe some scapular stability work. We can get after these things. A better example probably would have been an upper extremity injury, because like if you have a hand, a wrist, an elbow, something like that, they can still get on the ice and skate pretty soon. Yep. And we can maintain their aerobic system. We can maintain their lower body strength, so that when they get cleared to start doing things, that transition to a game is very smooth. So that's where my mind went first when you described that, and that there's always something you can do. Yep. There's always something. But there's also the flip side of that is most things need a period of rest, right? And if you got a race this coming weekend, like, you're not going to rest, right? Like, I mean, and I get that. And you've built, obviously in your guys' world, you build and train for a long period of time for these events. And I would probably be in the same boat. If I put my time and invested my energy into that work and I got an injury a week before the race, what am I going to do to manage myself through this? I'm not wasting all this time I just invested. So like I get that. I can grasp that. And there's obviously strategies that you can do in the short term. I mean, there's medication options, there's short-term injection options, there's options that can get you over the hump for certain things. But there still needs to be, whether it's after the race or when it's appropriate, to correct these problems. Because most of these issues that you guys are running into are chronic overuse issues. And I think that's definitely something that, when I look at that, if I have an athlete that has an acute injury, it could be an acute or chronic, but I always separate everything between a contact injury and a non-contact injury. So if it's a contact injury, like if a guy gets hit and his shoulder goes into the boards and he has a grade 2 AC sprain, I don't think I can really prevent that much. Like, I mean, I like to try to create as much stability around the shoulder as you can, but I can't influence that really much. But if you have an athlete that has more of the chronic non-contact injury, there's a cause there. Like, there's something causing this. Like, you might not know what it is, but the area that ends up being painful, in my opinion, is never the issue. Like, that's not the issue. So the common example for us is someone with chronic groin pain, chronic lower abdominal pain, athletic pubalgia, sports hernia, whichever terminology you want to use in the medical world. There's a cause, and whether that could be hip related, it could be low back related, it could be core related, it could be stemming from a lot of different things. And I think the biggest message that I thought of in getting kind of mentally prepared for this conversation with this population was there's a cause to that chronic pain you're dealing with. And you need to find a clinician that can identify that cause. Because if you never identify that cause and address it, it's going to creep its way back in.
I'm so glad you talked about that, because that's something that I always teach my students, and I'm always thinking about when I talk to different triathletes. They a question comes up. Well, my knee hurts. Like I got a patellar tendon issue. Well, was it a loading issue of your patellar tendon? Yeah, but what caused that? Was it ankle range of motion issues? Was it something going on in your foot? Was it your hip? Was it your back? And the injury often is, that's the analogy, the canary in the coal mine, right? It's the thing that's kind of giving you that indication that something is wrong, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what's wrong. So, Kyle, then how do you approach that? Like, what's kind of your approach to a chronic injury where you're kind of hunting?
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, all right, goodbye. So I think for me, it comes down to a thorough evaluation. It comes down to a thorough evaluation of the entire kinetic chain. And when I say kinetic chain, I mean all the way, if it's a knee injury, anything below the knee, and if it's anything above the knee. So you have to have that thorough evaluation, and it needs to be accurate if you're going to see results. So you need to have a thorough evaluation, identify 1, 2, 3 things that are contributing factors to this patellar tendon pain for the example that you used. And there's so many factors that can be involved with it. And if those things don't get addressed, it's bound to come back. It's just bound to, because like, especially when we get past our development age, like I'm not going to be able to change really the way that I run. Right. Like I don't think I can maybe make subtle things, like maybe change the way I strike or something like that. But like, I'm not really going to make much change. And from a hockey world, we always say, I'm not going to be able to change the way an adult professional athlete skates. Like I'm not. Like it's ingrained into their motor learning and how they do it. Can you try to get them to sit a little lower? Yes. Can you try to get them to extend a little bit more? Yeah, you can make subtle things, but their overall mechanics, I don't think you're going to make much influence on. So we try to look at so much of what can we do off the ice to kind of bring that kind of system and human body like back to like some sort of neutrality, some sort of base, so that when they go out and skate again, they have a longer tolerance before a problem happens. So that's kind of how I get, like, the human body is not meant to skate. It's way more meant to run, swim, and bike than it is to skate. Like the body is like, whoever invented skating is like, it's not, the body wasn't meant to glide and push off on a small edge of a blade. So there's going to be consequences that are going to happen. And our goal is just to hopefully reduce the chance that those consequences become pain.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think it's so hard for people that are not medical professionals to wrap their head around that. My knee hurts. I have to address my knee. I'm gonna rub different things on it. I'm gonna maybe ice or heat or whatever. What can I do for my knee? And it's really tough to wrap your head around that. I know, like, when I evaluate people and they hurt their knee and I'm starting at their foot and ankle, they're like, no, my knee hurts. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, I understand your knee hurts, but we need to find the cause. And the other difficult thing is you can find, or at least in my experience, I can find discrepancies in their foot or ankle, address them. It may not help, because that might not be the thing. And I think that's really frustrating for athletes and for clinicians as well. I mean, have you experienced the same thing?
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think there's times where you have to address the area. I mean,
Yeah.
you
Oh, for sure.
there are things that you need to, like, if we got a game tomorrow and this guy's patellar tendon flared up,
Yeah.
we're doing everything we can do to control pain at that site. Like, we have to,
Yeah.
as part of, like, is this person going to compete tomorrow? And I think a lot of triathletes would be in the same realm, in that if you have something bugging you 3 days before a race, you need to address that area. You don't
Yeah.
have time to address the whole system, right? So I kind of do kind of a two-prong approach, in where I'll do something to make them feel better in the moment,
Yeah.
right? Like something, whether that is dry needling the area, whether that is icing the area, because ice is a very good pain control. Ice is kind of going by the wayside, but it does control pain acutely very well. If it's some sort of, like, patellar tendon, for me, the first thing that gives me as a clinician the best results on a patellar tendon is vastus lateralis and IT band and TFL. If I sit there and I work manually through those structures with whatever modality you want, hands, needles, whatever, you're probably going to have a positive effect on patellar tendon pain. Like, unless it's really baked in for a really, really long time, you're going to have some sort of positive positive situation. And I like to do an assessment and a reassessment, not from a clinical exam perspective, but like, I always ask the athlete, like, all right, what bothers you? Like, what bothers you? Like, oh, when I do this single leg squat in the gym, it really bothers me. Okay. So then do whatever intervention, whatever you want to do, and then reevaluate that task. And usually you'll get a short-term benefit, which kind of shows, okay, I don't need to just work on my knee. So I think I definitely do things to address the whole system, but also things to address the localized area in the moment, because you need to get them to, one, see that your therapy is helping, but two, okay, I need to invest time in this. This isn't a one-off. This isn't I only need this one treatment and I'm done.
Yeah, I guess that's another thing is oftentimes, some of the patients that I've worked with, they kind of think it's like a one-time thing, like come see, go see somebody, and they're going to basically fix them in one visit. And sometimes you can make them feel better, but most times you're not fixing them in.
Yeah, I think if you had a patient that was really compliant away from the therapist, that is possible.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that's realistic.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think, so, because some athletes and some clients I've worked with are very dependent on the service provided to them, which is fine. That's what my job is. Cool. But others take ownership of it themselves and actually listen to the education I'm trying to give them to complement what I'm doing, so they don't need me as much. My goal is to make it so an athlete doesn't need me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to be there to help them, obviously, but through hopefully proper education, proper communication with our S&C staff, the proper changes to prep work and things like that, the ultimate goal is for them not to rely on me. It's to not need me again. So it's kind of the one thing of it's prevention has been this domain of athletic training forever. And if it truly was, like, we're almost trying to not work.
Yeah.
Like, it'll never happen. But our goal is to ultimately not have to do as many things. But there's contact related injuries, so it doesn't ever really happens anyway. But it's just the goal is ultimately for you not to need me.
I love hearing that, because that was actually one of my questions that came up when you talked about, we look at an injury as an opportunity to train other things, and immediately what pops into my head is, well, the triathlete is not going to be compliant. They're going to say, okay, well, I have a knee injury. I'll go bike for a little bit or swim for a little bit, but I better go test the knee injury out, and then they'll go run for 5 miles or what have you, and then all of a sudden the injury's worse. And so that was where I was really interested in this aspect of your work. How much coaching of the person from a, I guess, a psychology side, that in terms of how they get better versus knowing the kinetic chain and the cause of injury. How much do you spend in that world?
I mean, it's definitely, we try to do as much as we can, and it depends on the, it's a case by case basis. There's like, I have a lot of athletes that are very independent and they want to be independent, almost to the point where everything is underreported, which is a problem in itself. So, because the faster you get your eyes on something, the faster you get your hands on something, to be able to manage it is crucial. Like, getting on top of a patellar tendinopathy early, huge. If you let it bake in for 6 months, we got some issues here. Like, we're gonna need a serious rest period. Like, we got to go through a whole isometric phase. We got to go through everything in order for you like actually get to be pain free again. And that's where we try to educate our young athletes specifically on, I know this isn't the culture. I know you want to do anything because they want to stay on the ice. They need to impress people, and they do. It's their job. They're trying to build into it like this to make this their career, and I get that. But our goal is to keep you out there. Our goal is not to hold you from being out there. But if something doesn't go report it, if something doesn't come up, we have no choice. Like, and they'll get it. Like, they'll get, like, and I think triathletes would too. Like, they'll get to a point where there's like, I can't perform my best. Like, you reach that breaking point where you can manage and still perform well, or you just can't perform. You can't perform to where you want to. Probably shows up in your times, probably shows up in your splits. Like, you just can't do it anymore. And that in itself is a reason to address these things.
Yeah, I really like that. I was listening to a podcast a while ago, and it was with a pro triathlete, and it was one of these pro triathletes that rarely ever gets injured. And they asked, like, what was your success? And she responded that if I start to feel something anywhere in my body that's abnormal, I take 2 days off. And it doesn't matter what's on my training plan. It doesn't matter where I am, whatever it is I just take 2 days off. And I'm like, wow, like, we don't do that. It's like, well, how can I manage? Most people, that's how they do it. It's like, well, what can I do to so I can still run, or, and I think that's a really mature, can be a really mature approach. In particular, for somebody that doesn't have, access to an athletic trainer every day or a physical therapist every day. To me, it was a really interesting approach.
Smart.
Yeah.
It's a very smart approach. I don't think it's definitely not the common mentality that people take in any aspect of life, I would say. But it's smart. You have to listen to what's going on with your body, because the stuff's not going to get better. It's just going to build. Like, it's just going to build. And if that underlying issue does not get addressed, it's not going to go away.
Yeah, exactly. Can you talk a little bit about compensation and how people compensate and how that can potentially lead to injury?
Yeah, I think from what I see, I mean, there's structural compensations, like if somebody has like a true leg length discrepancy or something like that. But I would say the most things that we see is people compensate based on their previous medical history. So a big component of what we do is we review thoroughly every player's medical file. And it's, all right, everything under the sun. All right, what all has happened to you? What all is happening that can affect essentially how you move? Like, what have you done? Because this human body in front of us that has had a chronic femoral acetabular impingement is 3 years post ACL injury, had 2 high ankle sprains earlier in their career. They've created a way to compensate to still accomplish being a professional hockey player. Like their body has figured that out, right? So in itself, it's a compensation because nobody rarely, I mean, some of our young draft picks maybe come in with like pretty much a clean history. But then you run into the path of like, all right, they've been skating nonstop since the age of 5. And it's like, that's a completely different topic. But there's always something going on with the body that the body is compensating away from. And addressing these things are going to be very beneficial, very beneficial. A good example in hockey is the high ankle sprain. If a player's got a high ankle sprain on their injury history, I'm just like, oh, okay. Because it's such a brutal injury for a hockey player. And for the audience, the main way to get a high ankle sprain is to dorsiflex the ankle and externally rotate the ankle. Whether that happens from kind of clipping their foot and going out, or they get hit and they fall back on it, whatever. But it's dorsiflexion eversion of the ankle. And it's atrocious for a hockey player because that's the motion you have to do to skate, right? You're always putting your ankle through that motion and you have to do it. And it's notorious for re-injury. It's notorious for lingering. It's just bad. And it's notorious for causing this lack of dorsiflexion. And this lack of dorsiflexion is going to cause a person not be able to sit down in their skates. And when they skate, they're not be able to sit down to squat. They're not going to be able to do, they can't create a positive shin angle. They can't get their shin over top of their toe and their foot when they want to do an activity. And that just chronically wears on the knee. And that chronically wears on the hip, chronically wears on the adaptation of the groin, having to overwork for the hip flexors. And then it's going to turn into a groin problem. Then it's going to turn into an abdominal problem. And if these things don't get, and it's all stemming from that, I've seen it numerous times of that's like, okay, cool. Your ankle. All right. You had a high ankle sprain 4 years ago. I'm working on that. I don't care if you're healthy or not. I'm working on that. Like, and then it's just one thing that, and it sucks because in our world, an athlete feels great by like week 3. Like they feel like I can do everything. Like they're explosive in the gym. They're explosive off ice. They're doing everything they possibly can. But as soon as they start skating, they start putting their ankle in that position. Tweak here, tweak here, tweak here. Calms down. Okay. They want to keep pushing. Tweak here, tweak here. Then you start taping it. Even more problems. Like it's one of those things that you have to truly address and truly restore the proper range of motion. That's probably where I'm going with this conversation, is that you need to restore range of motion of joints that had previous injury, or the body is naturally going to compensate. It's going to compensate for me to sit up and walk over to the other side of my yard right now. It's going to compensate a certain way in order to do that. You're not going to feel anything. It's not a hard task, so you're probably never going to feel pain with it, but you're compensating to accomplish that task.
Yeah, it's interesting because, triathlon is an interesting sport where a lot of people don't start it until like maybe they're in their late 30s, early 40s. And, I've talked to a lot of triathletes in that kind of where they started at that point or even later. And I ask them like, well, tell me a little bit about your medical history going back. And like, well, I was active until I did this, until I sprained my knee or I fell or I did something. And I decided to get back into this. And you watch them run and you can see that there's something that's wrong. And over 10 years, they've learned this, how to compensate for this. And it becomes very, very difficult to change that compensation, especially when you're talking about a decade or longer. But and we actually have had on some people in the past that have talked about movement patterns. And I personally think it's really a good idea to work with somebody, especially when you're getting into a sport like triathlon, where you have all this repetition, to assess you and maybe address some of these things before they become issues.
Yeah, and I think you guys probably have a better eye for this. Audience has a better eye for this than I do. But if I'm out driving around or I see somebody run, like if you see someone with a purely efficient running stride, you're just like, whoa, you are killing it. But that's rare. It's super rare. And that doesn't mean that that person is going to be the best runner ever. It just means they have an efficient stride that's probably not going to create injury. You can be very fast with very terrible mechanics. You can be very successful at what you do, but it's rare to see that like pure running stride. You're like, man, that guy is moving and he doesn't even look like he's doing anything.
But if you
But I think
take that same guy and let's say he falls off a curb and sprains his ankle and then doesn't do anything for a few years and then says, you know what, I used to run well. Then they come back to running and they probably aren't going to be that smooth runner anymore.
agree.
And like I said, I think it's important that you find people in the community, whether it's in Las Vegas, if you're in Las Vegas or somewhere else, to help you. If you think this is you, to help you. And if you can find an athletic trainer, great. If you can find a physical therapist that does this, great. But finding somebody to help you, I think, is a good idea. And Kyle, obviously, you're in a situation where this is your job every day, to do this, and these athletes have access to you. But most triathletes don't have, well, none of them really have access, like daily access to a professional like yourself. So, and I'm not asking you to endorse anybody, but would you agree that it would be a good idea to have someone to work with?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that any person doing that should see multiple people.
Yeah.
I think they should almost be interviewing people. I think in the way the whole landscape is right now, everything's shifting from kind of insurance based, moving more to cash based. And there's good therapists everywhere. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I think you should almost do your homework. But a lot of times people are, if it's a true injury and you've seen a physician and you got imaging and whatever, pure referral, like you can be limited sometimes. But you need to find someone who, and it's out there. It takes time to find the right person probably, but you need someone who's going to have that one-on-one time with you to be able to work on what you need. And the reason I say that is because the classic PT model, this is nothing against PTs, my wife's a physical therapist and I have nothing against the profession, but the common insurance-based, referral-based outpatient clinic, you're not getting one-on-one treatment. Like this therapist is going to be seeing 4, 5, 6 people at once. And you're not going to be getting, in my opinion, the highest quality care that you can get. So I think there's options there, and it's probably more on the cash-based side than the insurance-based side. Granted, it costs money if it's not covered, but that can give you that one-on-one time. And someone who looks away from the injury site, that's probably the biggest thing. If you can find a therapist, athletic trainer, chiropractor, physical therapist, whoever that looks away from your injury site and you have a chronic injury, it's a good sign. It's a very good sign. So that's something that if I had to give advice for someone in that realm, I would probably start with that. Like if you walk in and say, man, my patellar tendon has been killing me for the past 3 years and I've been trying this, been trying that, and I can't figure it out. If all they do is throw some modalities at your knee and tell you to do like short arc quads, you shouldn't go back. Like you need to be looking at someone that is looking at your ankle, looking at your hip, looking at your low back. Like there's something causing this and it's not your knee.
The other one that bothers me is, when I've consulted people, is they go to a therapist or a chiropractor, whoever, and it's a different person every day seeing them. Right. And I'm like, well, how does that, they can read the note of what they did the time before and what the assessment was, but they're not truly creating a relationship with you where they can actually, develop this and see change and reevaluate over time as well. And it's not easy to find these people. And you're right, it is very much a cash pay model, and for most of these people that are doing this, and I get it. Like we pay a lot of money for insurance, but if you're getting your insurance is covering a visit that's not actually helping you, then it's probably it's not worth it anyways.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. And I think I mean, you're never going to see the same person for an extended period of time. Like there's one-offs of this therapist on vacation. I'm going to see this person this day. Like that's normal. That's normal life. Like, right. But you need someone who is managing your case.
Yeah.
Like if you are at a point where it's more maintenance mode and that person has maybe a student or an intern or something like that they trust, I think that's okay. But I think that there needs to be one individual managing your case. We do the same thing with our injuries. So there's injuries that I will take the lead on. There's injuries that our assistant athletic trainer will take the lead on. And we divvy those up because we want that consistent voice. And that doesn't mean that I won't treat an athlete that somebody else is managing, but it means that I'm going to be treating based on their model and what they are seeing and what they want to do. So I think it's always important for someone to be leading the way.
Well, I think that speaks to having that history between the athlete and the practitioner and building that history, because I like what you talked about in terms of if you've had an injury in the past, you're going to have to treat it at some point, or that's going to cause some other injury. And I always think of runners as there's three types. There's those who are injured, those who are recovering from an injury, and those who are soon to be injured. And so it's your best interest to have someone who knows what you've been through. It sounds like.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Because the body is meant to run. It's not meant to run very, very, very long distances. In my opinion. I mean, I think it's definitely meant to run more than it is skate by all means. But it's yeah, like you can make an analogy to any other sport really.
Mm-hmm.
But
I would also contend we're not meant to swim as much as people do swim for your upper body. I mean, your shoulder girdle is not, really meant to do probably these long sessions like the 6,000, 5,000 or a day, or 30,000 yards a week. There's the shoulders just are not that robust.
This is why I've only done a sprint triathlon. This is the reason, because it's the best for my body.
Exactly. Could not agree.
In a pool too.
Yeah, it wasn't real. It was in a pool.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Kyle, when you address an injury, and how do you know somebody inherently is ready to go back to play? Because I think that's an issue a lot of triathletes have as well. It's like, okay, you're talking about 3 weeks later, I'm ready to go. How do you kind of know?
It's a good point you bring up, and I know where you're going with this because we've had discussions on this very thing in the past. It's a balance between subjective information, what the athlete is telling us, like, are you mentally ready to go? Do you feel confident in how you feel? That's one piece. Sometimes they lie. You never know. The second piece is objective information, and that's where you got to lean on to make confident decisions, primarily from our world of, are you going to get re-injured? If I just trust what you're telling me, I don't know if it's true. Like, you probably can make it through a couple games, but are you ready to make it through the rest of the playoffs? Are you ready to make it through are you? So that's where we really rely on objective information. And that lies with a lot of things. That lies with, does your strength measurements match up to your other leg? Does that strength measurement match your baseline that we took at the start of the season? Is your range of motion completely restored? Is it symmetrical to the other side? Is it symmetrical to what we measured at the beginning of the year? And you can use any part of tests that you want to do to address those things. To assess those things. But it ultimately was like, we try to take as many baseline measurements as we can. It's a better comparison than limb to limb. Limb to limb's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but the best would be like, all right, are you back to where you were in a healthy state? You can make that you can put that into heart rate variability. Are you back to where you used to be when you were performing well before you got hurt? If you are, and you feel confident, ready to go, sweet, go, awesome. If you're confident and ready to go, but your numbers aren't quite there, then that's a decision then of, okay, maybe you're ready to go back, but we need to manage some things while you go back. And I think an example for that in the triathlon world is, okay, are you ready to go back into your training? Yes, but we're not talking about doing a race for another 6 months, kind of thing. Like, you're ready to start training again. That doesn't mean you're competing in 3 weeks.
Yep.
And I think that's where it doesn't always line up with people's expectations, and that's where people get frustrated.
Yeah.
But that's also why people get re-injured. So I think it's a constant risk management. Like, if you're an elite triathlete, right, and you're competing in a month, like whether you have to or not, like you're competing in a month. That's probably someone who's got sponsorships, like they're making money off of this, right? This isn't a hobby. This isn't something they're doing on the side from their full-time job. Like, that's a different animal than someone who's doing it as an activity more than a profession. So I think that always comes into play as well. So there's always factors, and I think people just need to be aware of those. They just need to be aware of those, and if you take a risk, you need to be aware of the consequences that can happen. So the risk you're going to take of competing in a week from now, you need to understand that the week after that's probably going to suck. But
or longer.
You were able to compete. So which one do you want? Do you want a high quality of life and be able to compete? Or do you want a low quality of life and you're still competing? It just depends on what you want to do. And you just need to accept that.
I think that's really interesting because, a lot of triathletes have like an A race for the year, right? So that's the race for the year that they are focusing on. And even if they're injured, they're still gonna compete, because after that race, they may not have something on the calendar for 4 months. And so they're willing to take the risk because they know that, well, that's going to be the end of my season, and I'm there already. The other thing that happens a lot in triathletes is it's very expensive to do these races, and there's no refund policy, right? Like an Ironman, $800, just to enter the race, and then you may have like hotels and plane tickets and all these other things that might not be refundable. And so it's like, well, you're going to race anyways because you're kind of pot committed to it. And so I think this does happen a lot in triathlon. And I love the fact that you kind of mentioned, understanding the risks. And that's another thing, that working with somebody that can actually talk to you through those. For example, if it's a patellar tendinopathy, which we're talking about, the risks aren't that substantial. But if it's something that, I don't know, let's say it's a disc herniation, and maybe the risk is significantly greater to you, but and to be honest with you, a lot of people don't can't understand the differences in those risks, and so having someone that is knowledgeable about those things to advise you. So there's another group of people that I'm going to give a shout out to, and that's a sports medicine qualified physician. And the truth of the matter is, there are not many of them. I think there are, and I'm probably wrong, 6 of them in Las Vegas.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot, but they're going to be the best people to actually give you that, right? Here's the risk of you actually doing this. And they're trained to understand and manage those risks with you. Because I got to be honest with you, a lot of just GPs and general physicians that aren't sports medicine trained, their answer almost always is, well, just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's the easy answer. Oh, your knee hurts. You have an Ironman next weekend. Well, just don't do it. Whereas, a good sports medicine trained clinician will say, okay, I understand you're going to do this. Here's the risks associated with it. And you as an adult need to make that decision.
Yeah. Well said. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So that being said, when you all work with physicians, and I know you guys do work with sports medicine trained physicians, how does that interaction between the physician, you, and the athlete, work out when dealing with injuries? I think people are pretty interested in the relationship.
Yeah, I think an athletic trainer is a special world in this, in that, one, by definition, athletic trainer has to work under the direction of a physician. I mean, that's just the way the way everything works to be an athletic trainer. But I think the best success stories with an athletic trainer and physician relationship is based on trust. So it's based on, does this physician trust me to do this rehab? There's different levels of that, but we've been lucky in the stance of we've gotten to the point with our physicians in that, like, there's not even like a protocol. If
Right.
we do a surgery, yeah, there's stuff you got to, there's stuff you can't do for X amount of time, this, and this, whatever. But I've worked with physicians in the past where it's like, all right, here's your sheet. This is what you do at week 4. This is what you do at week 8. Here you go. Right. And which is a successful way, right? But it doesn't allow the clinician, an athletic trainer, to have some creativity to make this the best it can be for a triathlete, the best it could be for a hockey player, the best it could be for a basketball player, whatever sport or whatever that person enjoys doing. It doesn't allow for that sometimes. Working with sports medicine-based physicians, and more specifically, physicians that have experience being team physicians, because there's a big difference between being a physician in an office working and being a team physician. And that's where this physician is a part of the whole sports medicine team. And we're lucky enough to have physicians that trust us. They know that we always have what's in the best interest of the patient. They know that if we ever have a question or something different that comes up, we're going to call them right away. That is the other piece too. There's always, in my world right now, it's direct. I have at my fingertips, I can contact a physician at any time of day.
Yep. That's
not the real life. That's professional sports. So I think to answer your question is it's based on does this physician truly trust what I do? And that takes time. That's not going to happen right away. That takes time. That takes a big surgery and a successful outcome to say, all right, I like it. Keep going. It's going to take those things. It's going to take a continued culture of learning around each other. And I think athletic trainers and anyone can do this very easily. You can offer your time to, whether it's a sports medicine physician, to observe injections, observe this, observe that. A big thing for me was going, if I had a player get a surgery, I go to the surgery, I get to watch the surgery, get to speak to the physician in real time about what they're doing and how this can affect what I'm doing 3 weeks from now. So there's ways to go about that, but it ultimately comes down to trust.
Yeah, good. Well, that's great, and I think that's a really important thing to understand, like how an athletic trainer works with a physician. And this audience is, because I talk about athletic training a lot on this on this podcast, so I think they get it. But a lot of just a lot of people out there don't understand that relationship, and then a lot of them don't even understand that athletic trainers are licensed medical practitioners. And then just so everybody knows, Kyle is gracious enough. He serves on the state board of athletic training, and so do I. And so, these are issues that we often deal with, is people not recognizing that athletic trainers are actually licensed by in the state of Nevada as medical professionals who work with physicians. So that being said, Kyle, do you have any other things that you'd like to add specifically for triathletes? And I'm going to ask you about, particularly about risk management and ways to ultimately avoid injury. If you were to give a kind of an overview as far as avoiding overuse injuries.
I think it's things that it's mainly just hitting the main points that we touched on already. On, if you have the time and the ability to do so, rest. Like, don't let something creep into something big. Like, don't let it happen, because it's going to happen. Like that's, unless you make a significant change in your mechanics or a significant change in your training or something, it's not going to get better. So like, you need to listen to your body. And if it's severe enough to the point where it's affecting your ability to train or compete, you need to seek out a medical professional that can help you, because it's only gonna benefit you to get on top of this a lot sooner than later.
Well said. John, do you have any other questions for Kyle?
Yeah, no, actually, I think that's really great advice, and especially for the non-professional athlete, the age groupers who are likely listening to this, is because they often hear rest and they just think that means, well, I'm not going to swim, bike, or run, but I'm going to go do all these other things, take care of the kids, do this, run errands and what have you, and they're not truly resting. And I think that's a really great message that you're giving, that rest is so critical to staying healthy, but really rest.
And rest allows recovery too, which is the most important thing. Like in conversations I've had with um, athletes in your guys' population, is that it's a constant train. It's constant. And if your body doesn't have a chance to recover, that's just a recipe for a disaster. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, which is the nature of your sport, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that because that's the nature of your sport.
Mhm.
But if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and you don't let your body to recover, specifically the tissues that are on demand to recover, they're just going to get injured. Like that's how the body works. That's what happens. So I also think one thing of advice too is to think back on if you were an athlete in high school, if you were an athlete in college, or if you had a bad car accident growing up, like something, if there was something that you had a major injury or a traumatic event earlier in your life, maybe think about that a little bit and be like, okay, if I had a significant ankle injury when I was 15 playing soccer, it's not bothering me now. But if I'm going to see someone for therapy or like maintenance therapy or something like that, that's worth bringing up.
Mhm.
That's worth bringing up and saying, is my ankle as good as my other one? Like
Yep.
it feels okay, but like, do I have the full range? Do I not? Like it's worth bringing those things up and taking some time to think through what all's happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, the other area that I think is interesting, and we haven't really talked too much about this, is if you've had an injury, let's say, I don't know, a chronic injury like a calf strain or something like that, and you go see a professional and they give you some exercises to do, I would say continue to do those well past the time it feels better. And I
Yes.
think
Yes.
athletes tend to like, oh, I'm back playing, I'm back training, I'm done with the rehab. And I think that if you can continue your rehab longer, I think you'll also be more successful, and that less chance of the injury creeping back on you.
Yeah, there's a very simple ways to assess those things. Like you can just stand, if you calf strain example. I mean, you can just stand on one leg and go up and down for as many times as you can until you can't anymore.
Yep.
Do the same thing on the other side. Is it the same?
Mhm.
If
It's
it's
actually
half,
it's
you probably got some work to do.
Mhm.
one of my things with people that I've worked with in the past is, especially runners, one of my criteria is, can you jump rope single leg 30 times?
Mhm.
Can you do it on the right? Can you do it on the left? And but also in my rehab, they would be doing they would be doing some jumping, some rope jumping. But if you can't do equal left to right, and it's your left that's been bothering you, well, you're going to be compensating.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, I can do 60 on my right and I can do 12 on my left, I feel fine, but you're compensating. So you're right. There's little things you can do. I like this. The thing about the calf raises, I love that one. It's the same kind of thing. Well, you can do 20 on the left and you can do 10 on the right. You're going to be compensating if you're not relatively close. I mean, it doesn't have to be equal,
Yeah.
but it has to be relatively close.
An example on the extreme that I think of with that is anyone who follows the NBA in the recent years when Kevin Durant was still playing for the Golden State Warriors and he tore his Achilles.
Yep.
And that was in the playoffs. He was recovering from a calf strain. And I remember the GM coming on after that game, and he was so just empathetic for the situation because he opened up and said everybody was aware of the risks. Everybody, including Kevin, was aware of the risks. We knew this could possibly happen. We did as much as we possibly could to mitigate this risk, but it didn't work out. That's professional sport.
Yeah.
right? Like that's this person doing this for a living, trying to win the championship at the highest level of their sport, right? That's not even close to the risk for someone who is not doing this for a profession. And you're essentially kind of taking the same risk. Whereas if you're a dad, father of three, and your kids are teenagers, you tear your Achilles, you're a different dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like you're a different dad for at least a year
Yeah.
if you get the proper rehab. So like there's other risks that are associated with that. I mean, that's why I switched to biking. My ankles suck.
Yeah.
I'm sick of rolling my ankles. I can't. I have chronic instability in my ankles, and I switched to biking, and it's been great. So I don't play as much soccer as I used to. Like I don't. I can't even go for a hike without the risk of rolling my ankle. So I've just avoided it. But I mean that's what I'm saying for this population, obviously, because you need to do what you want to do. But the problem with the triathlete, and even track and field, for lack of better words, you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over. You need to be doing it the most efficient way possible.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And then if we add another layer to that, what if your job requires you to walk around?
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So John and I are lucky. I mean, for the most part, we have desk jobs, but there's a lot of triathletes out there that they have to walk around for their job, or they have to be active for their job. And so the risk is even more significant. I have some friends that they play adult soccer, right? And the one guy, he needed to move for his job, and he tore his Achilles tendon and became unemployed, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a workplace injury, it was a playing soccer injury.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, what was the risk of playing soccer when you're 40? And we have to understand these things, even in triathlon, as well as understand the risks that potentially we're taking.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you bring up because I mean, Ted, you obviously know my supervisor for my job, and he knows that I mountain bike a lot and things like that, and he's always just like, Kyle, if you break your wrist and you can't do your job, I'm gonna be so mad at you. And I take that in for what it's worth and for real, because when I ride, I'm not riding to do this sketchy section, right? Like if I get to something that I know I can't handle, I walk. Like I'm not trying to. I'm doing it more for the exercise. I'm doing more for the outdoor activity, the exercise. I definitely like the challenge of being able to try spots that I couldn't get before, and I like that. But I'm not jumping. I'm not going off these cliff faces. Like I'm not at all trying to go down that path, because it's not worth the outcome. Like, yeah, it'd be cool if I did it. Cool. But I don't want to not be able to go to work tomorrow. So that I definitely weigh that in my head.
Oh, that's very close to triathlon in that. So, as Ted mentions, a lot of people have an A race, and they will avoid anything that could potentially get an injury leading up to that A race. So they really change their lifestyle or limit their lifestyle to swim, bike, and run. So that's a good parallel.
Yeah, for sure. And other people just ride indoors. They ride on their
Yeah.
to avoid, if they're going to fall or somebody hit them on their car.
Yep.
That's so boring.
Unless you do online racing, which is not boring
Man,
at all.
I can't do it. When we went to the bubble, so I did a lot of mountain biking when COVID hit, to the point where I was doing like 20 plus miles, like 2,000 elevation changes. Like I was doing a lot of riding, and I was having a blast doing it. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to try to keep this up. And I went to a stationary bike like the first day, and I got like 2 miles in, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing this. So like I transitioned then to like circuit training and stuff like that. But like that's a complete sidebar. But like I just can't. I need the outdoors, the sense of moving somewhere, I guess. Yeah,
Well,
but that's also, I'm not an elite triathlete, right? If you're an elite triathlete, you're gonna have to do some indoor training. I get it, but yeah.
it's all about managing risk and at the same time doing something you love doing. And so no, I totally agree with the enjoyment of being outside is what you're seeking out of that exercise, and that's
Yeah.
good.
All right, well, Kyle, we've been just over an hour, and we said we promised we'd keep you about an hour. So, thank you so much for coming on
I will
tonight.
say this: if there are questions that came in, I'm happy to answer them. I know we talked about an hour, but I am open. So I mean,
Yeah, no,
if there are some questions.
we don't have the questions. I think triathletes are probably already in bed trying to get ready for that early morning before the heat hits. And a bunch of our athletes are up in Oregon, and I hope they are resting before the race. So,
And Kyle, if any questions, oftentimes people watch this later. If any questions later, I'll shoot them to you in a text, and we can answer them that way.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for your time. Awesome stuff. We'll get you out there doing a triathlon, a real one, at some point. We'll get your ankles all healed up.
hey, our next event is an aqua bike. You don't have to run.
Yeah, that's true. It's yes, it is next Saturday, is it, or next Sunday?
It's Saturday, the 16th. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a swim in the lake and then a bike ride.
Although you do have to run from the lake to the bike, so that's a little treacherous there.
It is treacherous. Unstable surfaces, not good.
Oh, very much so.
All right. Well, thank you both. I hope you both have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week.
Awesome.
Right. Same to you both. It was a nice experience being a part of this. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Kyle. Okay. Talk soon.
All right. Bye.